Hey y'all, Casey here, and joined again with my lovely boyfriend Brandon Graham for another episode of Comics Review. Today we're going to be reviewing a Cloak and Dagger and Power Pack Marvel graphic novel.
It's called Shelter from the Storm, which I believe is a Bob Dylan song from the 70s.
Sure is. And
Bob Dylan song based off of the Power Pack.
Yeah, he was a big fan actually of Power Pack, and so he went back in time and wrote the song. Mm-hmm. That's how it worked.
Mm-hmm. Forward thinking.
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about today, and so yeah, what happens in this book, Brandon Graham?
Power Pack and Cloak and Dagger, Shelter from the Storm, is essentially about two teenagers run away in New Jersey and end up in New York City, where they're attacked by a gang, the Chicken Hawks. We'll get into that. And Cloak and Dagger attempt to rescue them, but within that attempted rescue, Dagger is hurt and ends up running away with the two runaways. That's the thing they do, and ends up in a shelter.
Runaways not yet invented though.
Oh, the Marvel Comics runaways, yeah.
This is the precursor.
Yeah, these guys are running away before it's cool. So they end up at a shelter, and then Cloak, looking for them, enlists the help of Power Pack, and while they're going to find them at the shelter, they get moved to another shelter, which is run by an evil mutant. And that's essentially the plot.
Yeah. And so
it's both very simple and incredibly convoluted when you start to question why anyone does anything.
Yeah, there's so much of it is like, why? But yeah, so sort of like I think the central theme is like young adult issues and potentially being a runaway and that kind of thing. Because I think I haven't read a ton of Cloak and Dagger, but my understanding is that like it was a pretty moralistic title where they would like use them to talk about contemporary social issues.
Yeah. It's I would describe Cloak and Dagger as kind of a ham-fisted attempt at talking about 1980s social issues.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird. This is almost like a after-school special.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the comic serves as almost this crux to talk about shelters for runaways, and even in the back of the book it has a bunch of phone numbers. It's very interesting cities too, by the way. So it has this page in the back that's like, call this number, and it has numbers for New York, Toronto, Houston, Fort Lauderdale, New Orleans, Anchorage, and Los Angeles. I suppose these are all major cities. Just in my mind, I was like, Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah. I wonder if it was more attractive for runaways then? I wonder if it still is. I'm not sure. I mean, I could see why Florida would be.
Do you think that runaways are... Because I know there's cities where the homeless population kind of increases because it's just easier to be homeless there?
Yeah, totally.
That must include runaways.
Yeah, no, agreed. It's just funny that Fort Lauderdale, I would have thought like Miami, or I guess it's too expensive. It's funny, so like on the cover, they've got the big bad, I guess.
His name is Cadaver.
Cadaver.
I mean, his real name is Simon.
Is it really?
Yeah, Simon Longley.
Simon Longley.
But his friends call him Cadaver.
But we don't actually see him in the book for at least the first half.
The vast majority, I think.
Yeah.
He's kind of just like the secret thing at the end.
His design's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, he kind of looks like if Grimace from the McDonald's Playland world had a like exposed brain and was covered in medical.
It's like Grimace meets Neuromancer meets the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character with the exposed brain.
Krang?
Yeah.
Krang is a brain.
Yeah, oh, sure. Right. Yes, that's true.
I just stopped myself from getting into the lore of Krang.
You're a resident historian on all things Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I remember it. I have very thorough Ninja Turtles knowledge until the cartoon started, and then I kind of watched the first 6 episodes and moved on.
Oh, actually, sorry. Before I got this away from you, get into that. I think you looked up some information on the creators, right?
Right. So it's very international, by the way. It was written by an American, penciled by an Italian, and inked by a British person.
Which now I think it's a little bit more. Well, we don't have inkers as much now, but like international books, I think, are more popular at Marvel and DC right now. But back then, I don't think that they were really, were they?
I think a lot of the Italian thing is surprising because there's different times there are different influxes. Like there've been several kind of British invasions into comics, and there's a point where a lot of Argentinian artists were showing up in American work, and it's a long side conversation. But at different points, Marvel and DC have sent over people to foreign countries to enlist artists, and it's fascinating too. It's something that I've always found strange is, to my knowledge, it's entirely artists, and writers at Marvel and DC are only from America or England. I'm sure there's exceptions, but I couldn't name one.
Yeah, I think we talk about this somewhat frequently because a lot of our favorite artists do tend to come from Europe, I think. And I don't think we've ever been able to name them. Like you said, not to say that they're not out there, but I don't think we've been able to name any European creators who have been able to write for the big two over here. They've been able to write their own books, like Mirka Andolfo and Maria Levitt and whatnot.
Sure.
But
I'm sure there's exceptions, but no one I can think of that's kind of a big enough name that it would matter. And it'd actually be really, I've never actually asked anyone from Marvel and DC the reason by that. I have kind of cynical reasons that I suspect, but I think there's probably some kind of internal logic for why that is, or maybe it's just accidental. So Bill Mantlo, the writer of this, really fascinating backstory. He is known a lot. Like, I first knew him because there was a ROM tribute art show that I was part of.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, well, he got involved in a hit and run in the 90s and has been hospitalized since then.
Oh, wow.
And it was kind of, I mean, the unfortunate thing about comic creators is even if you're like a major Marvel writer in the 80s, like, you still have to kind of go through benefits and things when you get into an accident. There's not really much in the way of setting that up. So he's still alive.
Good plug for the Heroes Fund.
Hero Initiative.
Hero Initiative.
That is a great organization.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and just general, I mean, there's lots that we could say about how poorly, unfortunately, the comics community kind of treats the older generation. Mm-hmm. But that's not news. But his career is fascinating. He was known in the mid to late 70s, Fill-In King. When Mark Wolfman was editor at Marvel, they enlisted this program where they're kind of tired of people being late all the time. My cat has just stolen a piece of fish. Oh, and she deserves it.
That's yours now, Waffles.
Good work, Waffles.
Yes, well done.
I respect the hustle.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed. Mad respect.
So I was saying, a lot of books were late in the 70s at Marvel. Mm-hmm. I think we talked about before how kind of pre Jim Shooter's involvement, Marvel was very kind of all over the place. So they enlisted this program where they were just really cool. Actually, they would just make a bunch of backup stories and fill in issues that were self-contained. So if a book looked like it was going to be late, they just threw one of those in. And Bill Mantlo saw that as like a chance to kind of try out all these things. So he wrote like every character he could get his hands on, and wrote like most of the lines just as like fill-in things that just sat there until they were needed. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I feel like that would be a really good thing for even indie books to do. To be like, here's a one-shot issue that's just sitting there until I get late.
Totally.
Yeah, him and George Perez invented the first Marvel kind of Latin character named the White Tiger, and later put him into Spider-Man when he was working on that. Oh, and really fascinating, in 1988, he actually passed the bar and became a public defender for the Legal Aid Society in the Bronx.
The Bronx Defenders?
Yeah.
That is bananas. They're one of the best public defense offices in the whole country.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Wow.
So either way, he seems
That's
like
really
an
cool.
exceptional person, and he did lots of really interesting work.
Yeah.
And the penciler of this, I didn't realize. I thought the style for this was kind of off-brand for what I was used to in Powerback and Cloak and Dagger. But in the kind of mid-30s of the number 30s of the Powerback series, he actually came on and was the penciler.
Oh.
And then worked on it for a little bit, and then moved on to Moon Knight, and then eventually went over to DC, where he co-created the character Firebrand, which I'm not too familiar with. Yeah, and inker is mostly Mark Farmer is mostly known for working with Alan Davis, and he did a great run on Excalibur with it.
Oh, cool.
And then did a bunch of other weird things. Like one of the things he's working on he worked on a Superman Elseworld story with John Cleese, which is very bizarre. Which seems to just kind of parody a lot of Britishisms.
That's the guy you cough at, I guess.
Yeah, when you to make fun of your people, get in here, John Cleese.
Yeah, getting into the story.
So now, the truest tragedies are those that rend families. Witness this tableau unfold inside the rural New Jersey home. I'd say the cruelest tragedies. The cruelest tragedies are those that happen in New Jersey.
Would you? Is that like an original thought that you might say?
Just my sick burn on New Jersey. In your face, Jersey.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so it starts off, and I wrote down the names. Marjorie Rifkin is basically she lives with a nightmare family who's been withholding her mail, and she's gotten into all these prestigious schools.
Yes, continue.
Do you have a point of contention against their nightmare family?
No, they're
You're never allowed to have
terrible.
children. Sorry, what were you saying?
Go ahead.
She lives in a nightmare family that's been withholding, they're like, you've gotten into double Harvard school I just invented. And and her family's like, that's fine, you can just learn from the pigs down at the barn. That's good enough for you. And she's like, I hate you, and she runs away.
Oh my god. Okay, so what is actually happening is that her parents don't want her to leave home.
Right.
So they're like controlling her by hiding her mail.
That's what I said.
Yeah, okay.
And then Juan Cordova, who's the other. And both these characters are kind of stand-ins for Cloak and Dagger almost. Yeah. Because Cloak and Dagger are also runaways, with a gentleman of color. And so Juan Cordova is actually dealing with like an alcoholic, abusive father who keeps hitting him and his mom. So he runs away. And the two of them are from very different parts of the small town, different economic levels, and they run into each other at the bus station and end up kind of teaming up and going to New York together. And they end up in Times Square. And actually, I know I'm not showing a lot of visuals on this one, but I was very impressed with how, like normally in superhero comics, they'll be like New York City, and it's like nothing like New York City, but the actual like drawings of Times Square and of Penn Station look like how it looks there. I mean, 80s version.
And there's like a really on point drawing of, what's it called? Port Authority.
Oh yeah, that's actually what there's it.
And why? And you're quite familiar with Port Authority.
Oh, I worked at a bar that was next to Port Authority.
That's right.
There's such a horrible implication by being. And you're familiar with Port Authority? It's like, yeah, that place.
That's where we met.
Yeah, that place where people go to have anonymous sex in the bathroom and do meth. Yeah, I love that place. I worked at a bar that was across the street from Port Authority.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories there. There's a Hojo's here. Well, Howard Johnson.
Hojo's?
Yeah, are you familiar?
No.
It's a place.
Okay. And so before we even get there, though, there's like this little bit about it cuts to the Powers family house where Julie is reading about the plight of runaway kids and stuff.
Yeah, Julia was always kind of a wet blanket of the Power family.
Or the socially aware one.
That's what I said.
Oh my god.
I really like, I don't know if we talked about this before, but the Powers are fantastic because, I mean, I'm a big Power Pack fan, but I also really like that Walter and Louis Simonson Louis Simonson wrote the initial Power Pack, and the Power Kids' parents, they're like a child superhero team, and their parents are based off of Walter and Louis Simonson. Yeah,
That's right.
fantastic comic writer and artist couple. Walter Simonson, creator of Beta Ray Bill.
Yes. And all of the cool, like, Space Thor stuff.
Yeah, I believe he did Thunder Frog as well.
Oh, nice.
Familiar?
Oh, yeah, he's very fun. They brought him back relatively recently.
Okay.
It's fun.
So they go into Times Square and everyone's like, they're just see all the most cartoonish pimps and prostitutes you can imagine. And there's a guy who looks a lot like, in that vampire movie with the Coreys.
Oh, Lost Boys.
Lost Boys. There's a famous saxophone player in that you make a lot of jokes about. And the leader of this gang called the Chicken Hawks.
Speaking of Port Authority.
Yeah. The amount of times that I've publicly talked about what Chicken Hawks is cartoonish. 'Cause me and my friend James Stocco used to always joke about it because Jesse Ventura used to call people Chicken Hawks all the time.
Oh.
And in my day, Chicken Hawk was a term for an older gay man that was going after young boys.
Oh, was that the case
back
in your day?
I had a friend that worked at a Fred Meyer, and they sold, this is in like the early 90s, and they sold like Teen and Bop magazine and those things that had like kind of heartthrob young boys on it, and like middle-aged gay dudes would come in and buy it, and she'd always be like, that Chicken Hawk buying his copy of Teen Bop Tiger Beat, that was it.
Oh.
Yeah.
It sure is a magazine that maybe still exists.
Tiger Beat? I bet it doesn't.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
It definitely did when I was younger. Maybe it went away. Who knows?
Yeah, at the print, all right. But Chicken Hawks, Jesse Ventura, Governor Jesse Ventura, who I would coin the phrase crazenable for.
Crazenable?
Yeah, it's like reasonable to the point of crazy. Or crazy, but also reasonable sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, crazenable.
Crazenable, yes, the word that we all know.
He would always call people Chicken Hawks when they were politicians that were very pro-military or very into sending people off to fight who had never served in the military themselves.
Right, and that's like a play on the term hawk, because a hawkish politician is someone who is very pro-war.
Oh, okay.
And so chicken hawk is like, yeah, you're pro-war, but you're not willing to fight yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So at some point I imagine there are people who are chicken hawks.
Yeah, that's probably true. Hey! So they get assaulted by this gang, and the runaways get assaulted by this gang, and Cloak and Dagger show up to save the day.
Yeah, and Cloak and Dagger's origin I thought was really funny in this. And by Cloak and Dagger, I of course mean Tyrone Johnson and Tandy Bowen.
Yes.
And I was really amused at Tandy Bowen's, Majorie Rifkin and Tandy Bowen's names just being like, it's like, have you never met a white woman? Are you just making fun of people? It just seems mean. So in Cloak and Daggers...
So have you heard the term, the word, or the name Marge?
Simpsons?
So that's the short version of Marjorie. So it's a name that exists.
You're telling me that this name is real because of blue-haired yellow person in a cartoon.
And also humans. Like Tandy, though, I've never met someone named Tandy. That's a strange one.
It's short for tandem, like if somebody's kind of in between being a Tandy and Marjorie. Cloak and Dagger show up, and I really like the panel where they first become Cloak and Dagger because you get their love. It's like this tragedy of like they were kidnapped and the experimental drugs were used on them. And they become... Yeah, it's just like, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
so,
the logo looks like it's like coming off, like Adam West Batman style. Like,
yeah, exactly. And there's a weird... I can get into it more, but there's a weird implication in this that people using experimental drugs on you always kind of turns out awesome.
Oh, that's true, because with the cadaver, it's the same thing.
Yeah, the villain in this, people use experimental drugs on
The real
Simon Longley.
Yeah. the real message of this book is do experimental drugs. You'll get superpowers.
You have to try it out. Let's see. Oh, and in the fight, like I said earlier, Dagger is actually hit with a gun on the chin. Pistol whipped, and it knocks her into an amnesiac state. And while Cloak is busy, like, cloaking these, your standard Marvel Comics interracial gang.
I don't fully understand Cloak's power set or Cloak's use of his power set, because he will send people into his cloak, which is the darkness, right? And then they're like, oh no! But then they just come out the other side.
They don't just come out. It's not like a bus trip. They come out it's basically like this freezing cold nightmare place where you have to kind of look into your own darkness.
See, that's so much cooler than how they it just looks like a fun house in this. There's no scary. There should be demons and stuff in there. I feel like
in the actual series they do kind of versions of that. I think the image that I'm remembering is Cloak goes inside his own thing at one point, and there's just a graveyard in there.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering right. So yeah, and it also kind of zaps people with their life force. So that's why you need Dagger to be feeding her life. It's basically he's kind of like a void that he's like a black hole, and she's like a sun, if you will.
Yeah. Right. And that's one thing that they do a good job of sort of illustrating in this, is that they both need each other, because if Dagger has too much light, then she will basically just burn up, and if Cloak doesn't have enough, if he has basically too much shadow, then he kind of loses it.
And he needs to feed off of her.
Right. So it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
One might say codependent.
I wonder if that's been. I feel like reading this makes me want to do more thorough read-throughs of both Cloak and Dagger and Power Pack again, because they're both. I mean, Cloak and Dagger. My memory of it is it's a very flawed comic, but very interesting. And Power Pack is just really fun. There's a great feather boa wearing prostitute here, where she's in a feather boa and kind of looks like she's about to go on her one-woman show pretending to be a prostitute, and and she just sasses pistol whip Dagger's outfit, and she says the way she's dressed, I ain't surprised that they're in trouble.
Yeah. Check. So then,
I'm slowly breaking you down. Eventually you're just going to be like, whatever, Brandon, just tell us about 9/11. They do a really cool thing in this where whenever Dagger, you kind of see things through Cloak's eyes sometimes, and they color it where people are kind of almost this single color of glowing. It's almost like he's seeing their life energy.
I didn't pick up on that when I read through. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because it's weird too, because sometimes it'll just be people he's thinking about when he's not even there, and it'll just be all in a shade of purple or in a shade of red. And there's two, so Dagger ends up at this place called Safe Refuge, and that's the good place for runaways. And they have a security guard outside, and there's these very after TV special kind of things where people are shown this is what happens and we'll help you here, and there's a security guard so you're safe, and there'll be a single mother who's there explains why the guard is there and how some people might come and hurt us here, and we're safe here. And there's a page we're looking at where Dagger's trying to figure out Cloak is trying to figure out who he should go to for help for this thing, for finding Dagger again, and he goes through and he's oh, the Father Francis, the priest that I was friends with, and it's just oh, he's gone mad. And then he's what about Spider-Man?
He's slinging around.
Yeah, he's I don't know where he is. And he's
the New Mutants.
Yeah, the New Mutants.
I was hoping. And
he's but they're in Westchester. That's too far. And he's Power Pack. Sure, I'll go get these children to help me in the in Times Square's underbelly to find.
That seems fine.
Yeah, I mean they're very effective children.
It's true.
So here we're in the good
Safe Refuge.
And they take Dagger's outfit, which has a big old blood stain on it now.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of Sass and Dagger's clothes here. It's like nobody in this has lived in the Marvel Universe. Yeah.
Well, just because you live in the Marvel Universe, when you encounter a superhero, it's still probably like, whoa, that's crazy.
Sure. But I assume my impression is that Cloak and Dagger just kind of hang out in Times Square.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you'd be like, oh, there's that person, the superhero. It's weird too because they're homeless, but they're in very fancy. It's like she's dressed like, like she's in the film Xanadu.
She is. Yeah.
But she's homeless in a full white outfit.
Well, they might not have like a permanent home, but I'm sure that they stay somewhere.
You're saying she's got a stain stick somewhere.
No, I'm sure they have beds and stuff. I don't know, place to lay their head.
I mean, I think they stayed at the church until the priest went insane.
Weird. I just haven't read that much.
Yeah, well, at the end of this, they talk about they're like, wish we had a home.
Huh.
So let's see. Then we have the kids debating calling up their parents, but realizing that why they left.
They're like, no way, we're not going home.
Yeah. Oh, and here we get the Power Kids house, and it's just very like, it's a great 1980s comic book girl's bedroom.
Lots of unicorns.
It's just as a pink orb on her shelf, and
Mm-hmm.
lots of unicorns.
And pink blankets, pink curtains. It's like my room.
It's your room. This artist does an interesting job of drawing Cloak looking like a teenager sometimes. Because, I feel like oftentimes they draw him like this like 30-year-old monster man, and you kind of forget that him and Dagger are the same age. And there's a weird thing where the kids are like going out and they like kind of do a bad job of lying to their parents, and the father says, "Bye, Katykins," because he clearly doesn't know that this is going to end up in a comic and he's going to be embarrassed. And then they disappear, and they I got the impression the parents kind of knew where they were going. Yeah, they kind of whisper like, "They're not going to buy a Nintendo, Mother." And the mother says, "They're not." And says, "Don't you remember what today is?" So I don't know if they like, there's a day of the week they go off to their superheroing.
What? What do you? It's their anniversary.
Oh.
They're going off to get them a present. I
Oh,
actually
I
do
see that
try
part.
to get. Okay. Yeah, they're not like, oh, our rascally children are gonna go fight crime. Like that'll be fine. They don't even know they have powers.
I don't see. At some point, I feel like in the comic, I might be misremembering, but I feel like in the comic, at some point, they start to catch on, or maybe they just know, because at some point they are kidnapped by Snarks and sent off to the Snark homeworld or whatever.
They definitely say at some point in this that the parents don't know that they have.
Okay.
But it's possible. I mean, it would make sense story-wise over many, many issues that they might learn eventually. But anyways, so Power Pack goes off to assist Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, here's a scene where a young black mother is talking about what a great place safe refuge is for her.
So then there's this funky billboard, huh?
Oh, yeah, so the Power Kids are meeting up with Cloak behind the billboard, and it's just like a 1970s mustache man's face with a hole in the mouth for smoke to come out, which I assume was a real billboard at some point.
Indeed it was.
But yeah, it's a cool, like, this artist is kind of better at kind of tactile reality of New York City than a lot of Marvel comics, and I certainly appreciate that. They're thrown into a van. And behind the thing, Cloak starts freaking out about how he needs Dagger's light and he can't survive the hunger, and he's like worried about if he's going to eat the kids, kind of just having a general tantrum. And Energizer, one of the youngest of the Power Pack kids, ends up energizing or absorbing a bunch of roof cement and shoots off a blast of energy that like helps him eat.
Yeah. It's like it's a little snack.
Yeah.
A light snack.
Yeah. And so they take
the bad guys abduct the Marjorie and Juan to the bad safe place.
Which is called the Shelter Society.
The Shelter Society.
These are all very generic names for, I guess that's the reality of it, but I feel like if there's like an evil cover for it, it could almost be like one of them is called like, this is the Gentle Dove, and the other one, or Gentle Dove sounds like a great name for an evil establishment.
Yeah.
And then the good one would just be like, there's a Shelter Society. But the Shelter Society is that.
That's true.
And they throw in some good 1980s graffiti on this. The sound effect says slam, and it almost looks like the graffiti.
It does, yeah.
Because underneath slam, it says Mark, and it looks like it says slam, Mark. And Sal plus Rick. I assume those are elderly Italian men.
Well, Sal is the artist. Sal Veluto.
Oh,
and Mark
nice.
is the inker.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, so it's like and maybe Carl worked on this. Carl Potts is the
Editor.
Is the editor. So yeah, that's really cool. The graffiti is the creative team's names.
Yeah.
They were thrown in a cell. Yeah. They were thrown in a cell in a false runaway place for runaway kids.
Mhm.
They hired the creative team for this book.
Oh.
It's really sad if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because what happened to them?
They became cadaver.
They all became cadaver?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Kid Dabber. That's a child cadaver. Kid child cadaver. That's correct. And then just beating up our friendly runaways.
This is like such a cool reveal page where it's like a full splash of cadaver of the evil guy.
Yeah, and they basically throw Dagger into like a basement, which has this very kind of nuclear waste feeling. It's just like kind of a circle of stairs, like MC Escher stairs. The cadaver's just hanging out there at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Cadaver runs this place. I don't know why he didn't just take a nice office. I don't know why he's down in like the sludge basement. He looks like he has a gun tied to his leg here.
He
I know it's
does.
just pipes.
Oh, he also reminds me of Mojo.
Oh
Mojo
yeah,
is-
he's very Mojo.
Mhm.
And he's giant.
Yes.
He's like looks like a 400-pound dude.
Mm-hmm. Great beat.
Great ape, yeah. Oh, and his fingers also are. How would you describe that? They're needles.
They're like these needles. They kind of remind me of like the Borg assimilation probes that go off of.
Oh yeah, and he has a nightmare jewel in his forehead
Mm-hmm.
that he uses to draw energy from people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weird thing too. The cadaver's backstory is I don't know where he got all the accoutrement.
Yeah.
Like he was just kind of a kid who was in a hospital for a long time, and even the very hospital things about the adult cadaver, like he has these kind of breathing things in his nose.
Mm-hmm.
None of that was in him when he escaped from the hospital in the flashback. And then the other weird thing about him is he starts a shelter for lost children. Well, he's essentially like a naked child.
But I mean, he does that to feed his need for life energy.
I'd be really fascinated to call him. How does he get the capital for that? How's that work out?
The backstory.
Yeah.
The real.
Just a lot of him, just like, and then I got into the stock market. There's a good mass master. The Powerpack kids show up and start beating up all the gang, the Chicken Hawk gang at the evil shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And Massmaster does his kind of the middle child, I guess, of Powerpack, or the younger boy has a power where he can turn into a cloud and expand his atoms, or he can shrink down and become incredibly dense.
Mm-hmm.
And his name's Jack, and it's the Jackhammer. And he shrinks down and lands on evil Jughead's head and knocks him out. And and then I guess they have to. Cadaver is draining Dagger of her energy. Cadaver. And
It's their like.
like we ship them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I do.
Maybe you do.
Maybe I do. Anyway. Cloak shows up and throws Cadaver inside of his
Cloak.
Yeah, but it was just like there's a full page of him going inside it, and it's this like H.R. Geiger looking
Mm-hmm.
like it looks like a excuse me, like a maze of caverns with Geiger faces all over them. And then when Cadaver gets dropped out, he's like lost like 300 pounds and just looks much more like a normal human.
Right, yeah.
They saw his stuff. And then it's very weird because then they're like,
well, normal human, not fully normal. He's still purple with like all of these like electrodes in his skin and needles for fingers and stuff. But aside from that, yes.
Yeah.
Looks more normal.
He doesn't look like Mojo anymore. It just looks like a chubby dude. And then Dagger's like, or Cloak's like, let him die. And Dagger's like, no, I'm a nice lady that makes life for people. And she saves him. And then the weirdest part of the story for me is, because you brought up the parents' anniversary coming up.
Yeah.
The nightmare jewel that he uses to siphon people's life force from it, from others, they just grab that and they're just like, oh, this will make a pretty banging present for our parents. Like this thing has been used to murder people.
Yeah.
Like this thing, because later, so the cops on the next page show up and find him in the basement and assume kind of arrest him and everything.
Yeah.
That jewel is evidence. That probably would help a lot to put this guy away.
There's probably enough anyways, but it is taking evidence from a crime scene and just giving this life force sucking thing to, here you go, Mom and Dad. Like, what?
It could be another story in the future where it becomes a problem. That they have this weird life force jewel just hang out in your parents' thing. You're like, here's a leaky cup you kids made us at summer camp, and here's Nightmare Jewel. Maybe they are constantly giving their parents like horrible crime scene things
To like set them up.
No, just like because they're traveling to space and fighting things all the time and always busy. They're just like, oh, look, we have a shrunken hand, and here's
Whitey's head mounted on the wall.
Yeah, maybe every present they've given their parents is a murder weapon.
Yeah, it's their thing.
It's their thing.
Whitey is the name of the horse person, by the way, that gave them their powers.
Oh yeah, I know Whitey. He's a chameleon.
I was chameleon.
Who else is here?
Oh, for waffles. It's for waffles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they go back and they give there's a kind of page of Cloak and Dagger. Oh, I wanted to say beforehand is the two runaway kids decide to go home and face their fears in New Jersey, face their parents, which I would advise against.
Yeah,
I think they ran away for really good reasons and should probably like use the shelter and get jobs and get their lives together and not go back to their rural families in New Jersey. And also, here's the thing, not go back to New Jersey.
I mean,
yeah, and then Cloak and Dagger are like, I wish we had a home to go to, Cloak. We have some things just as good, Dagger. And he's like, we have something just as good. He's like, come inside my van, Cloak.
great. And then the story is over.
Yeah, and it's just they're giving their parents this murder weapon. And that communality of closeness called the family is a game that any number can play.
Communality. I've never. It's a clunky word. Yes. So, and okay. Yeah.
What do you think of Power Pack and Cloak and Dagger Shelter from the Storm? Power Pack, Cloak and Dagger, and who did the song?
Bob Dylan.
And Bob Dylan's Shelter from the Storm.
Yeah. So, first the writing. I thought the writing was, it was pretty good. It was, very after school, especially in a lot of ways, but like, wasn't sure.
F it.
Yeah, it was pretty good. What did you think of the writing?
Yeah, I mean, it is, and Power Pack got roped into those things. I've never read about it. There's like a Spider-Man Power Pack dealing with like sexual assault book and things like that.
I mean, I think there's a Power Pack. No, I don't think I know because I have it. It's a Power Pack New Mutants crossover too. They kind of like show up in the different.
Okay, because I like that a lot in Power Pack comic.
Mm.
They like interact with Wolverine or whatever.
Yeah, it's cool.
And that was really fun, like as a kid reading it, especially because it was like, oh, this is how these superheroes are dealing with like actual kids and this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very grounding that they had a family and school and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this one, both this and the Emperor Doom one that we talked about before, I feel like they have this kind of art style and coloring style that is, it kind of feels like there's something sugarless candy about it.
Yeah, that's a really good description. Yeah, like it's good, but not like right home. Nothing right home about it.
It's solid, but it's not. It's so grounded in reality and kind of not as fun as there's no stank on it.
Yeah, and I think the art was pretty good. The coloring actually, though, I didn't super love. It's almost it looked like they're almost colored pencil or something to me.
It has like kind of it's probably colored dyes actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's Julie Mitchell, who I'm not too familiar with. But yeah, it has this kind of colored dyes, almost like Milestone comics. If you're familiar.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it. Yeah, it's not my favorite.
Yeah, so art was so. Babe factor.
It's essentially non-existent.
Because it's like a kid's thing, so like there shouldn't be.
Well, it's funny because Dagger, Dagger's babe.
Yeah, she's pretty.
But they always put Dagger in these situations where it's like, Dagger deals with childhood sexual assault. You're just like, Jesus, this is not the place for any of those thoughts.
Yeah. Strange.
It's a
design
weird juxtaposition. Yeah.
With sort of. Anyways.
Wear some slacks next time, Dagger. Not to shame Dagger.
So there's that, and then the zaniness.
I'd like it to be a little crazier.
Yeah.
So I was thinking in reading this, there's a weird thing where I felt like they could have cut some corners in this. There being a good and evil shelter is kind of weird for me. Like I feel like it would be a much cleaner story if they just went to a shelter and it turned out to be evil.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think what happened is that really confuses the call a shelter if you're in trouble. But
right.
The fact that there's an evil shelter also confuses the call a shelter if you're in trouble, because it's like flip of the coin, 50% chance you'll get eaten by cadaver, or it might be a good one.
Yeah, I felt like the sort of the evil shelter didn't need to be a shelter. Like,
yeah.
It's not like they spent time there doing sheltery activities. It was like they got abducted and then tried to get fed to the big bad.
It should have just been the gang.
Yeah.
It should have been like, this is the gang's little warehouse that they hang out in. Yeah, so I think that aspect of it is messier than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. So writing, I would say C.
I think I'd give it a C across the board. Like I think generally it's competent, and sometimes that's almost a detraction from these things because I almost want it to be more ridiculous than it is.
Yeah, and I think one thing to also recognize is that you and I are not young kids anymore. So what we look for now is very different than what we were looking for when we were first looking at comics and that kind of thing. If I was Cloak and Dagger's age when this came out and I found it, I would probably be really into it. I think it would resonate with me a lot.
I'd like to reiterate that I was a child snob.
Yes, you were reading Mobius and Minara when you were 6 years old.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have been. But it was funny because we recently watched G.I. Joe's The Mass Device again. And the common thread between a lot of the things that I really loved as a kid, that as an adult, they are so crazy. They're just all over the map, just this doesn't make sense. And in G.I. Joe The Mass Device, they have they have all these magical elements, and one of them is just heavy water. And heavy water is a real thing. Heavy water is radiated water, which I now know as an adult. In G.I. Joe, heavy water is the water that you go find when you go underwater, and then you go to a secret cave underwater that has heavy water, because it's way down. It's really heavy.
Mm-hmm. It's really heavy.
Yeah.
Right. So your comic book spoiled life aside, for those of us who were stuck buying things off of the spinner rack at 7-Eleven, this would have resonated with us, me, the royal we.
I wonder how. I assume this was a direct comic shop thing because it is a graphic novel.
Sure, not important. The point
No,
is,
I think that's interesting because it isn't something a kid would get at a 7-Eleven.
okay, so if you were like a kid who had access to comic book stores, then you could find this.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, the point is, what I'm trying to say
Please
is,
help my long-suffering girlfriend.
yes, someone please send help.
Her boyfriend's trying to snap the little wings off of Namor's feet, and he's needs to be stopped.
Poor little feet.
That's right.
Anyways, I think that this would have resonated, at least with me as a kid. Maybe not with everyone, I guess, Brandon and Graham, but...
I mean, I like...
Sipete! Man, you're done. But I don't think it's for us at this point. So we will be passing it along to a new exciting home, hopefully, via Cosmic Monkey.
Yeah, we'll bring a box at least. Box of the recent comics we're reading, Cosmic Monkey.
Yeah. So, thanks for watching. If you got something out of this video, please click those like and subscribe buttons. And until next time.